Morning, Creekside. It's time for another beautiful worship service. I'm in the house of my daughter and son-in-law, which I'll mention again during the sermon, but it's been so great to be down here. I trust that you're flourishing in the midst of this. I trust that you're allowing God to help you with creativity and passion, and that you're moving into this, not waiting for something to end, but just moving into this. And I think the passage in Colossians will be a great reminder of that this morning in Colossians 2. So I hope you enjoy the service. What I'd like to do before we start is just read you this morning's passage if I can. We find ourselves in Colossians 2, starting in verse 8 and going down to verse 15. This is what it says. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. For in him the fullness of deity dwells bodily, and you have been filled in him who is the head of all rule and authority. In him also you were circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of flesh, by the circumcision of Christ himself, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through faith in the powerful working of God who raised him from the dead. And you who were dead in your trespasses and uncircumcision of your flesh, God has made you alive together with Christ, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. May you be blessed by the worship time this morning that Isaac will lead us through in this morning's passage. May you be blessed as a church by all that we bring to you this morning. God bless you.
He's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down, and every chain will break as broken hearts declare his praise. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? And our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. And our God is the Lamb that was led for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Sing, Open up. So open up the gates, make your way before the King of Kings. Our God who comes, and our God who comes to save. It's he to set the captives free. Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? And our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting my battles. Every knee will bow before him. And our God is the Lamb that was laid for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Come on, declare in your life and in your family. Sing it. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Yeah. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? who can stop the Lord Almighty? Yeah. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Yeah. And who can stop the Lord? And our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting my battles, and every knee will bow before him. And our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Oh, sing, oh, Oh, Creekside, I just want to say that I haven't sang for like 3 weeks or more, so my voice has been giving me a hard time recording this service. So yeah, if you hear some weird stuff there in the previous songs and this, sorry about that. So let's worship together. Here we go. I need you to soften my heart and break me apart. I need you to open my eyes and see that you're shaping my life. All I am, I surrender. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. I need you to soften my heart and break me apart. I need you to pierce through the dark and cleanse every part of me. And all I am, I surrender. Yeah. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. And I'm broken inside, and I give you my life. 'Cause I may be weak, your spirit's strong in me. My faith may fail, my God, you never will. Well, my faith may weak, your spirit's strong in me. But my faith may fail, but my God, you never will. My flesh may weak, your spirit's strong in me. My faith may fail, but my God, you never will. Sing it. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. When I'm broken inside. I give you my life.
Well, good morning, Creekside. The shelter at home takes yet one more step. I'm actually in probably an unfamiliar place to almost any of you, but not all of you, by the way. I'm in my daughter and son-in-law's house recording a sermon from down here, since we're staying down here for roughly 2.5 weeks, kind of helping them out with our new grandson, Bodie. It's just going incredible. Been a neat, rich time with us and our kids down here. They're both down here, obviously. So that's been really cool. And this is a neat house for me, especially doing this sermon, because to my right, which you can't see, maybe I'll take a picture for you, is the bench seat that Eric Johnson built for Kelly and John. It's just unbelievable. And then right behind the camera is the kitchen that Tom Aftal basically remodeled with me as his laborer, by the way. And if you saw a lot of the trim work, that was Matt Lyman around the doors and the windows and baseboards and such, along with Tom and about 1,000 other things Tom did at this house. So there's just a neat kind of Creekside community feel when I'm here that just reminds me of all the time those guys spent helping out. So with that said, let's continue this awesome study in the book of Colossians and the letter that Paul wrote to this church. and I so believe that God always orchestrates what we study and what we're going through for each one of us individually and for us collectively. And I could not agree with that more in regards to this letter for this time that our world is going through. That these words to me have been so powerful and rich and helpful. And I hope they've been that for you. So remember what we discussed last week. Paul has been pouring into this little church in Colossae, the place that he's never really been to and people that he's never met in person. And he's grounding this church. He's rooting this church deeply in the truths of what the Father has done for them now through Jesus. And then now how it should be and is affecting their lives. Remember, they are holy and without blemish because of Jesus, and now in complete harmony with God, as are we. And in the middle of this kind of grounding of them, he warns them. He warns them not about what you and I might expect for him to warn them about, the things that we are concerned about, particularly right now, that they were as well: loss of job, loss of freedoms, loss of health, loss of life, right? All the things Paul and that they were actually facing right then and there, much like us today, but rather that people will and are coming alongside them to unearth their sense of what is true and what God has been doing for them. Colossians 2:4 says this, I say this in order that no one may delude you with plausible arguments. Paul makes it clear people outside of them are getting them to not think that Jesus is their substance, their treasure, their belonging, the one who holds all things together. This is what they should be concerned about. Paul is saying what Jesus said to his disciples: don't worry so much or be afraid of what might harm your physical body. Be afraid of what might unearth your mind and your heart. Be afraid, concern yourself mightily with what might change your foundation for living. And as I said last week, this is your and my greatest danger, particularly right now, but really at all times. People, first of all, within our churches, telling you and I that what we do is more significant to focus on than what Jesus has done for us. Or second of all, people in the culture telling us what Nietzsche told us, that God is quote unquote dead, right? And he tells us, the culture tells us this simply by never mentioning God's name behind anything that takes place. And then finally, the news that just hammers us, particularly now, all day long with this pandemic, that we have no hope. Or if we do have a hope, the hope is in the government saving us or some scientist coming up with a solution to help us and to make our life better. Jesus, Paul says, is our only hope and foundation. Colossians 2:3. Jesus, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Colossians 3:4. When Christ, who is your life. Colossians 2:8. See to it then that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to the human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, excuse me, and not according to Christ. So Paul starts this next section in this way. And this morning, what I want to do is I want to tackle this morning's passage with two simple questions. First of all, what primarily should we be watching out for in our life that can dishearten us? What do we need to focus on that can throw us mentally and with our heart? And then second of all, what do we need to know deeply that will seat us firmly then in our hearts and minds? So let's start with this first question. What primarily should we watch out for in our life that can dishearten us? I've said this so many times to so many people, and I apologize if I've said this to you, the listeners of my Creekside Church, many times before, but I think it's so apt. Being a Christian is like being in a river. If you don't paddle, you're going to end up way off course and way downstream. Life is not a lake. Life is not static, as we know. It's always moving. And this dark world and its deceiver, it pulls on us. So we must paddle with our hearts and minds. It's what Paul said in his letter to the Roman church, and I think it's in Romans 12:1. Do not be conformed, right? Don't let the world conform you. That means the world's pulling you in the wrong direction. You have to paddle. Instead, he says, be transformed by renewing your mind. I heard it said recently, too, that being a Christian is like riding a bike. If you aren't pedaling forward, you're going to fall. And in this case, the pedaling means constantly rooting yourself again and again on a daily basis in Jesus, excuse me, our King. Jesus, the Creator, the recreator, the sustainer of all of life and of our life. You will always know you're on the right track, and you can do this on a daily basis. You'll know that you're on the right track by simply measuring yourself on two things: my calmness and my gratitude. Am I calm and am I grateful? That's how we know we're rooted in Christ. Paul gives several kinds of people and approaches specifically to watch out for. First of all, he says, watch out for the you need to do more approach. It's kind of cool, this word Paul uses. Make sure no one takes you captive, he says. It's a beautiful play on words, apparently, in Greek that we don't see in English. And I apologize to Kimberly Grassi for my pronunciation right out of the gate. But the Greek word for captive is synagogon. And it's almost the same word as synagogue. And so Paul's playing on this idea of people telling you have to do more in your religiosity and in your approach to make God happy. Paul is implying dedicated religious folks can take you captive, so don't let them. So why would Paul need to warn them of that? I mean, couldn't we all use a better approach to life? Couldn't we all use more obedience and dedication? I think partly so, but remember what Paul wrote to the church in Galatia, if you're familiar with that. Paul spent the entire letter to this church in Galatia, letting them know that these religious types would completely derail them in their heart and in their mind. They would just be as well off as pagans, Paul ends up telling them, because living better isn't really our main problem. We need God. And it's kind of interesting, these two churches, Galatia and Colossae, they're not far apart at all, even geographically. So it's very similar culture and pressure that these two churches are facing. Years ago, I'm going to guess it was, say, 5 years ago, there was a couple in our church, and as so happens every now and then, I knew they weren't going to stick. And that's a weird thing to say, and it may sound terrible, but I just knew they wouldn't stick because this guy in particular was unbelievably religious. And all of his focus was constantly on what you do and what I do in our obedience. It was never on what God has done for us. And he would complain to me about my teaching periodically, which is how I knew I was on the right track, by the way. And I remember the last time we spoke, and I never saw him after this. He's never come back to our church. And thankfully, if you really want to know my opinion, he came up to me and he was really upset with me. And I said, XYZ, so-and-so, why are you so mad? He said, because you don't talk about sin enough. I thought, isn't that fascinating? He he is complaining that I'm talking about our lifestyle, that I'm not talking about that as much as I'm talking about God and Christ and what he has done for us and how that affects then our life. I've always said this, if you spend your whole life looking backwards and focusing on what was and what you did wrong and all that stuff, all you're going to do is bump into the trees in front of you. You have to look forward. Paul says they come at you with two things. First of all, philosophy, he calls it, which is the love of wisdom. It's the image of this amazing facade on a house, but then you go inside and it's just disgusting. There's no substance whatsoever. And one of Brian Fury's latest blogs on the Liz Here Now website, he wrote a whole blog on Henley's famous quote. You all know the quote. It goes like this: "I am the master of my fate and the captain of my soul." Henley's quote, "I am the master of my fate and the captain of my soul." I have always loathed that quote. What absolute, utter nonsense, I think. And the virus today screams the nonsense of this statement. The world is literally being attacked by a micro, non-visible, even mostly non-detectable monster, and we are literally powerless, people, to do anything about it. Our brains, all of our technology, our science have done basically nothing. The only thing we can do is hide inside. This is the greatest thing that we can come up with. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but this is all we can do, because why? We're powerless. We are not the master of our fate, and we are not the captain of our soul. That's nonsense. The Killers, the band that I'm sure some of you listen to and others are like, what the heck are you talking about? The Killers wrote this great song a few years ago. And at first, I was kind of taken back by the song. It was something I thought you would hear on ESPN with some athlete thinking great of himself. And the more I've read the lyrics of this song, and I love the song, by the way, it's particularly great for climbing a mountain hill, but I think it's really a play on our own ridiculous sense of ourself. In Henley's quote, this is what it's titled, "The Man," and this is just a smidgen of the lyrics. "I know the score like the back of my hand. Them other boys, I don't give a damn. They kiss on the ring, I carry the crown. Nothing can break me down. Don't need no advice, I got a plan. I know the direction, the lay of the land. I know the score like the back of my hand. Them other boys, I don't give a damn. I'm the man, come round. Nothing can break me down. I'm the man, come round, and nothing can break me down. I got gas in the tank, I got money in the bank. I got news for you, baby, you're looking at the man. I got skin in the game, I got a household name. I got news for you, baby, you're looking at the man." What nonsense, and beautifully played out in this song. And so obvious today in our lack of control and our lack of power. This is what religion does to us. It gets all of us little idolaters to focus more on ourselves rather than God. And all under the auspices, by the way, of obedience and purity and living well. It's really quite hideous. The second thing Paul says, don't let them take you captive with philosophy or empty deceit. It's just this thing that looks like it's something, it's cunning, but it's empty. There's no substance to it. Again, to take what is good and honorable, like living well under God's direction, and then make that the aim and not God himself and what he has done. Remember that famous statement that Jesus said to the Pharisees in John chapter 5, John 5:39. You search the scriptures, Jesus says, because you think in them you have eternal life. But the scriptures, it is they that bear witness of me, yet you refuse to come to me that you may have life. So this is his first warning, really. Watch out for the people that are trying to tell you that you just need to do more, and that'll fix your life. Second of all, Paul says, watch out for the someone or something else will look after you approach. Colossians 2:8. According to the elemental spirits of the world and not according to Christ. What an interesting phrase. Don't let this take you captive according to the elemental spirits of the world. This word elemental or elements is a really, really great translation. It's actually referring to kind of these small local deities that they had in Colossae to control their life. Of course, Paul doesn't believe any of these deities are real, right? He knows they're just wood and stone. But rather, the problem is these little deities, these elemental spirits, they become real to us. And they replace God in our thinking. They are anything and everything in our life that we put our stock in to save us and to carry us and to make our life work. Remember again the verse that we just read earlier. When Christ, who is your life, that means that anything that you put in His place on a daily basis to provide you life is an elementary God of this world. The government will save us, right? With these bailouts. The scientists will save us eventually when they come up with a cure for COVID-19. The release from shelter at home, this will bring my life back. If I physically live, I'll be okay. Anything we place in our life to give us life outside of Jesus is an impotent God. This is what Paul warns this church about. Again, not what can harm the physical body so much, but rather what can unseat Christ in our hearts and minds. Whatever idea someone comes up with, this is the acid test for us, folks. Does it have Jesus, the Messiah, the Lord, the Master, at its center and at its focus? And if it doesn't, then beware. It's telling you that it has the key to bring you life, and it doesn't. So then what do we need to know deeply that will seat us, again, firmly in our hearts and minds, that we need to keep coming back to? Well, here's the key. Here's the key. And if you hear nothing else in this second half, hear this. The Colossians already possess all they need. That's the key. This isn't about gaining or obtaining something, but rather recognizing what you already have. And if you and I, if we have given our lives to Jesus, so we need to hear this so tightly, everything we need in life we have because of Jesus already. Colossians 3:4, when Christ, who is your life. Colossians 2:3, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So Paul gives two main reasons why you don't need anything else in your life to mask life itself. Two main reasons you don't need to be completed by any other person or any other system. And if you grasp these two things, you will remain steady and firm and calm and resolute and relaxed and full of gratitude. Two things. He says, first of all, know deeply that Jesus holds your life. Jesus holds life itself. Colossians 2:9, for in Christ, the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. And you have been filled in Him, who is the head of all rule and authority. This statement is supposed to bring you right back to that grand poem in Colossians 1 that hopefully as a church you've been memorizing, the postcard that Diana Ewan sent out a couple weeks ago. And if you haven't, I really encourage you to do that. Colossians 1:19, remember this verse? For in Him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. But Paul is now even spelling it out even further for us. See, Jesus isn't just fully human, and as in the guy that was here 2,000 years ago. And He's not just full of God as if when He came, He was acting on behalf of God. He was and is the bodily form taken by God Himself in all the fullness of the Trinity. Remember what Paul said. He is the image of the invisible God. He makes God visible and makes sense to us. See, Jesus isn't half man, half God. He is God Himself fully, even in human form. So what does this verse mean to us then? And what does it mean to say that Jesus holds life? And how does that seat us firmly? If therefore, Paul is saying, you possess Jesus, meaning you have bowed your knee to Him just once and His Spirit has come into you permanently, two things, Paul says, have taken place. First of all, you are filled, Paul says. You need nothing more. right? You have everything you need. So the question that we have to deal with every day of our life, not just during this pandemic, every day is, do you buy that? Do you buy that you have everything you need, even now? And the second piece of this is so powerful. It's saying this: no authority can go over Jesus' head and impose itself then on you and I. Jesus is the head over all of them, over everything. But that also means if something is louder than Jesus, if something is claiming authority over you, it is actually not real, right? I hate to say this, but you are letting it have rule that it doesn't actually have in your life. And I know that can sound a bit like I'm oversimplifying. Believe me, I'm fully aware of the power of things like anxiety on our life, or depression, or PTSDs, or worry, or fear, or pressure. I know what they can do to us, but the truth still stands. Jesus is the full embodiment of God and is the ruler of everything. Nothing even has a chance to step over Jesus' head. So part of our answer to our question is, with our hearts and with our minds, we cannot allow anything to convince us that it has authority over us. So what do we need to know deeply that will seat us firmly in our hearts and minds? Well, Paul tells us the first answer right here. Jesus is the full embodiment of God, and he has ultimate authority over everything. Everything. So don't then allow yourself to ever be convinced something has a stronger hold over you and on you than Jesus. Not your finances, not your friends, not your family, not your future, not your career, not someone's opinion of you, not your past, not your kids, literally nothing. He's the man. Colossians 2:9, for in him, in Christ, the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily, and you have been filled in him who is the head of all rule and authority. So that's the first thing. And the second thing Paul tells us that we need to know deeply is that Jesus holds our new reality. So the question then is, what is our new reality? What has Jesus accomplished for us to give us a completely new reality? Well, the bottom line in our life was in peril. That's the bottom line. Our life was doomed. As we said a couple weeks ago, we are doomed, all destined to lose to everything darkness has to throw at us, mostly death itself. So Jesus obviously then comes along to solve not just our behavior, not small change like that, but rather what sin and darkness ultimately produce, which is death. And to do that, Jesus does several things for us when he goes to the cross and resurrects. We need what Jesus has, and to do that, we must be fully identified with Jesus in his life, in his death, in his burial, and in his resurrection. Everything that happened to Jesus, we need to happen to us, in other words. Jesus lived, and then Jesus died under the curse of darkness like humanity. And then Jesus was buried, and then Jesus rose to beat death and all that it could possibly throw at him. Thus, you and I need the same thing. We need to live. And then we need to die, right? We have to die. That's the reality that we looked at a few weeks ago. And then we need to be buried. But like Jesus, we need new life as well. So listen to this next set of verses that Paul gives. Colossians 2:11. In him also you were circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of the flesh, by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through faith in the powerful working of God, who raised him from the dead. You can read similar language in Romans 6 if you want to read that after this message sometime. Very similar kinds of ideas. This whole deal with circumcision and baptism, they're both outward signs of an inward reality. Paul is saying to these Gentiles, you don't need to be circumcised on the outside because the inside has already been circumcised by Christ. God has removed, in a sense, this old skin, if you will. He has removed your old life, your old self, as they say. And baptism then is about identifying with, right? This idea of baptism, like when you get plunged in water, you are fully immersed in Jesus, right? And now in three very specific ways, right? First of all, you died. This phrase he gives is putting off the body of flesh. Remember again, you had to die. That's the curse of darkness. That's in its intended end. We all have to die. So Jesus says when he died and then you bowed your knee to Jesus, you are immersed in him and his death. You died, he says, already. Your old, pagan, idolatrous, cursed life is gone. Second of all, you were buried, right? Buried with him in baptism. That's what the phrase is. Again, you are immersed into Jesus' life. So picture your old person underground and gone, right? Don't associate yourself now with your former self. And then third, your new person was raised. You were also raised with him now through faith. Remember, Jesus was the first of the resurrection, right? You and I then, we're the second and the third and the fourth and the millionth and the billionth, right? So it's just so sad to me when I speak to Christians and they tell me what a crud they are, right? How awful they are, how they cannot forgive themselves and they can't move on from whatever they've done. They say things like, I can't move past X, Y, Z. You are buying a lie, is the answer that Christ says. Right? You are not buying your new reality. The old dude, the old gal, the one destined to die is gone, according to Jesus. He buried the old person and has raised a new person, which is the real you. You were born into now then a new family, a new person, right? So that's so cool to me. And you even have new parents, the Trinity. And the other believers are now your blood relatives in the blood of Christ. And that also means you died to all the old solidarities in your life. You have died to all the old allegiances and the old habits and the old connections, all the things that people associated you with in your former life. You're in a new family as a new person with a completely new, holy, unblemished nature, right? So hear this. To believe that God raised Jesus from the dead is to believe that God raises the dead. Right? Don't tell me you believe the Father raised Jesus and that then you as a Christian are somehow lousy. That doesn't even jive, right? To believe God raised Jesus from the dead is to believe that God raises the dead, meaning you and me. Paul says it all over again for us so we don't miss the point. Colossians 2:13. And you, who were dead in your trespasses and in the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He, the Father, disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in Jesus. We'll talk much more about those last two verses next week. Again, Jesus holds the ultimate dominion in your life. No one has a voice above his. So then the answer is don't let anything in your life act like it does. It's our choice. We have a control. We can change our heart and mind on this. Buy into the new reality that Jesus holds the ultimate dominion in your life. And second of all, that Jesus has raised you to new life. You are a new person. If you don't feel new, you're buying into the old reality. So let me just close with just two questions for you to ponder. First of all, do you live as though nothing has ultimate authority in your life other than Jesus, right? And again, you can tell this by how calm you are and how grateful you are. Think about this in the shelter and home. Do you live as though nothing has ultimate authority over your life other than Jesus? And then second of all, do you associate yourself every day as a totally new person? Do you wake up and not only say, it's a brand new day, but I'm the new person Christ created for this new day, and grab his hand, never looking back, only grabbing his hand and moving forward with him. This is how we renew our minds and hearts. This is how we do not get disheartened as a church. This is how we root ourselves and ground ourselves during this crazy, crazy time. Creekside, I love you. May God bless you. May he make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. May you feel the calmness and the gratitude of knowing that Christ has ultimate authority in your life. God bless you.
How great the chasm that laid between us. Oh, high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadow of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written, it is, and Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine? Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. And Jesus Christ, my living hope. And we all sing hallelujah. Praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah. That has lost his grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name. Jesus Christ, my living hope. And this hope that we have wouldn't be enough, wouldn't be real if Jesus hasn't risen from the dead. It's for the resurrection that this hope is actually living. So let's sing. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, a roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Yes, it is. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, our roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. And Jesus, yours is the victory. Oh, sing hallelujah. Praise the one who said